Good evening and welcome to Inside Government for the fall 2018 semester here at Cayuga Community College, and broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as WDNR, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We are delighted to have in our studio today Cayuga County Administrator J. Justin Woods, who is just completing his 10th month as Cayuga County's 4th administrator. It has been a busy spring and summer and fall since Mr. Woods was last in the studio, working on a number of matters, including a state-mandated shared services plan, preparing his first budget, which will be adopted before January 1st, with a submission to the legislature, as well as a whole host of items such as reorganizations of county departments, as well as a water system in Aurora and expansion of broadband. We will be talking about all of this and more with the administrator in the next half hour. We had hoped to bring him back on for our first show in September, and we got Tuesdays and Thursdays mixed up on our end, and we apologize for that, but welcome back.
No problem. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So you're everywhere, to say the least, and I'm assuming you were, I noticed you're in purple, and this morning, or today at noon, they did the domestic violence photo in front of the courthouse, and I know you have had staff out and about doing trainings over the last 2 days, correct on that?
Correct. It's a Domestic Violence Month, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we've had staff involved in a number of trainings. The Detective Lieutenant Shank spoke at the Wednesday morning roundtable yesterday.
Did an excellent job.
Sheriff Gould and the District Attorney, Legislator Batman all spoke at the event this afternoon. So it's striking when you realize how pervasive domestic violence is. 1 in 3 men in their lifetime, which people wouldn't expect, have experienced domestic violence. 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men have experienced partner-on-partner violence. 1 in 15 children have been eyewitness to it. So it's pervasive, it's horrific, and the more we recognize the problem, the more we speak up about it and speak up when we see it or suspect it, the better we can do to address it.
And so yesterday morning, you mentioned Lieutenant Shank spoke, but they brought in a speaker for the Wednesday morning roundtable, and he had said that we have, in fact, moved backwards in some cases when it comes to the criminal justice system and how we deal with this issue. So we'll be doing more shows about that. We are in between candidates right now. You're filling in for us, which we were delighted to have you here for. I said at the top of the show, you've been there just about 10 months. You started, what, the 2nd or 3rd week of December?
December 18th.
So how's it going so far?
Wonderful.
So if it's December 18th, today's your anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So what's been your biggest challenge so far?
Making the transition to county government. So I felt ready to be a city manager. I spent my career in local government. So
you did a lot of planning.
I was a planner. I did strategic planning in local government and city town government, and that was the career path I had been on. And I had developed the management skills and had the subject matter base, and that's had been my focus. I applied for this job because it was somewhere I wanted to live, and I thought I had the management chops to do it, and I think that is proving out to be the case. But there has been a big learning curve in terms of the subject matter and the differences at the county level that the county is responsible for. And
there have been some bumps in the road along the way. There was an issue during the summer about a website. How did that ever work out? What was the issue?
Oh, the issue was funding.
It's always money.
The issue is always money.
It's always the money.
It's always money. And it also was tied into the questions of broadband.
So I know we're going to talk a little bit about your monthly report. It's separate from this. You were trying to redo the whole website for the county to make it easier to use.
Correct.
User-friendly.
Correct.
Have you gotten the money for that now?
Yes, the legislature ultimately, after a few months of discussion and deliberation, approved contracting with a vendor to do a new county website. We're working through that project now. It's being managed out of my office by my new executive assistant, Monica Salvage, and she's working with all the departments to build new content for the new website, and we're hoping to go live in early 2019.
And how much will it cost?
It will cost $20,000 a year for 3 years, and then it will, $28,000 a year for 3 years, and then it will go down to just the hosting fee, which I think is about $10,000 a year.
But that's the cost of doing business.
Yes, and we actually have some other savings that we can offset by renewing this site that we think will end up over the long haul, over a 6-year life cycle of the website, end up being cheaper than what we're currently paying.
I don't want to necessarily just deal with only current events, but I know this week you've been moving along your restructuring operations. This is something you came on in the spring, talked a little bit about, and you've put your first test out there. What are you proposing?
So, to back up even before I arrived, the legislature hired and contracted with an outfit called CGR, the Center for Government Research, to assess the county operations. And one of the recommendations that they made was creating a Department of Public Works. And when they issued their final report, I thought it was one of the first things that we should do coming out of that report, and I recommended that in the spring. The legislature, at the time, the Public Works Committee voted for me to draft that law. So we spent some time studying how to do it and then drafted a law. There's a public hearing on it next week, but it has.
So what are you proposing?
I'm proposing a integrated Department of Public Works that brings the Highway Department, Buildings and Grounds, Parks and Trails, and Weights and Measure into one unified department that handles all of our public works.
Because currently they're all separate entities with separate infrastructures and all that.
Exactly.
Okay. So is this something that you're proposing to save money, to be more efficient, or both?
Both.
Okay.
So, but more about operational efficiency.
Okay.
The upgrade from a highway superintendent to a director of public works will cost more money for that salary position. But I believe that the long-term benefit of having more integrated management and more experienced management over our public works infrastructure will more than make up for that in savings.
You said there's a public hearing next week, so where are you in the process by way of what is the process to get to the end?
Sure. So the process was that in September, the legislature set a public hearing. That'll be at the October legislature meeting. It's during the October legislative cycle, was approved by the Public Works and Ways and Means committees. So after the close of the public hearing, if the legislature wants, they could act then, or they could wait another month and act at the next meeting.
And so this is not something that will be finalized in the budget. You're doing this now.
I'm proposing the law now, and if they approve the law, which I hope they will, then I've got a second authorization to go forward and start advertising to fill the position. It's an appointed position by the legislature, so what that means is I would conduct a search with search committee. I would make a recommendation from that to the legislature for their appointment, and my hope is to have somebody here by the beginning of the next year.
Okay, but will you have to put funding in there for next year, or are you saying there's funding already existing for?
There's been enough vacancies that there wouldn't be an impact to the 18 budget, and it would surprise me if we had somebody before the first of the year, but that's the goal.
And obviously that was one that was identified in the CGR report. Are there other ones that are low-hanging fruit at this stage that you're going to be working on before the end of 2018?
Well, the website was another project that was in the CGR report that we've moved forward in, as well as codifying the county's laws. So both of those projects were in the CGR report and have moved forward. We hired a deputy treasurer, and once she gets her feet on the ground, we'll continue to look at.
And she just started?
She just started, Mary Beth Leeson.
She was with Cuddy and Ward?
She was. She brings an audit perspective to the county. Jim Orman, the county treasurer, was kind enough to let me sit in on that interview process, and I think we got a great candidate to lead our accounting division, and bringing that audit perspective, that global perspective, as well as the accounting experience will be really beneficial to our team.
And so are there other, you had spoken to the Wednesday morning roundtable with Chairman Mahunik, and one of the items that I remembered on that list, I thought, was a purchasing officer and things. Are those more
purchasing?
Let me get into the second year.
I proposed a purchasing director in the budget,
which
I'll be presenting to the legislature in 2 weeks.
Okay.
I certainly hope that is one of the priorities that I have for the 2019 budget, and a position that I think we need. We're currently having an audit done by the Office of State Comptroller of the county, and I expect that some of their recommendations will be in the purchasing area. So we're certainly looking to improve our purchasing capacity, and that ties in very well to what we are trying to do with shared services.
And just so you make it clear, is the audit because somebody reported something wrong, or it's just a normal time of the audit?
It's a routine. They've been through the schools, and now they're getting to the other government entities.
Okay. I was going to go to shared services. We'll come back to that because that's important. Where are you in the budget process?
I'm presenting the budget on October 30th in a special meeting to the legislature. Then 2 days later, we'll start to have some Ways and Means workshops on the 1st and the 8th of November. Ways and Means is scheduled for the 13th to adopt a preliminary budget. And later in November, there's a public hearing date that's been set for the legislature to review the preliminary budget. If they're happy with it at that time, they could adopt it. If not, then we'll still have the rest of up through December 20th, I believe, to finalize the budget.
But your hope is to get this done in early December
or
before?
My hope is to be responsive to the legislature's concerns and questions, and hopefully work with them to produce a very good budget for 2019.
So purchasing will likely be in that as a possibility. I know you haven't heard this, but have you got any direction from the legislature about tax increases or spending?
I've had some discussions with members of the legislature. I haven't had any formal direction from the body as a whole, and that may be something.
Let me summarize for you. Keep spending low.
Yes.
And taxes flat or lower.
I've heard that.
Okay. I have just solved all your problems. You don't have to go meet with them.
Excellent. Then we should have a good budget. We have some challenges.
Okay.
You know, we're looking at a 10% increase in healthcare costs this year. That would be about $860,000. And then we have a calendar challenge. Next year, there's 53 weeks. And what that means is that we have an extra Medicaid payment. So every 6 years, the calendar does that, and that's a $300,000 cost.
And but at this particular stage, are you anywhere close to deciding whether you have to make a recommendation in regards to increasing the tax levy?
We are getting close to that place where we can make that recommendation, or figure out if we have to make that recommendation. So we took in all the department requests, we took in the agency requests. We're going through them now and making the management cuts, the management recommended cuts, and we're discussing those with the departments, and some ways negotiating with some of them.
Management cuts or management, we just can't do this now?
The departments I asked the departments for all their requests. Give me what you need, give me what you want, and then we met with all the departments to go through them and collaboratively reduce some of those numbers. And now we're going through, and I'm paring the department requests down to the administrator's recommendations.
Any other new initiatives you'll see in this budget that you talked about with Chairman Mahunick in the spring?
There'll be impacts from Raise the Age. But those should be offset with.
You need to explain what you only got 25 minutes. So Raise the Age is what?
Raise the Age is a law that was passed by New York State that raises the age of criminal responsibility for minors. It raises it this year, effective October 1st. That just passed from 16, and then next year on October 1st, 17 applies to 17.
And this will require you as a county to provide more services for those in that gap area.
It transforms the juvenile justice system in many ways for 16 and 17-year-olds. And I won't get into all those details right now.
We could do a full 30 minutes on just that alone.
We could, in fact, and we're going to do a presentation. Ray Bazzari and Jay Despoiler, I just butchered his name, sorry, Jay, are going to do a presentation at the legislature meeting on where we are in our Raise the Age. It's happened, and it's supposed to be offset 100% by state reimbursements for the increased and incremental costs to the services that we provide.
And you will believe that when you see the reimbursements?
I will.
Okay, all right. So at this particular stage, public hearing, initial public hearing, late November?
For the budget?
For the budget. And then when do you see a public vote itself?
It's up to the legislature. If everything...
They can legally do it that night.
They could do it on the 27th when after the public hearing. That would be great if that's the case. And if not, we have a number of times where the legislature will be meeting for their regular legislative cycle in December. And we'll have opportunities to do that then as well.
So despite the fact that you're rebuilding your website, will voters be able to go, or taxpayers be able to go on on Halloween?
Yes.
And be able to see what you've presented the night before?
They'll be able to see it within minutes of me filing it with the clerk on the 30th.
Okay.
And then the presentation will be available on the 30th as well.
You mentioned that you have a new person in the Treasurer's office. You also have a new Veteran Services Director?
We do. Captain Jessica Strassel. I'm happy to report she was just promoted to captain.
Okay. She was lieutenant when we first planned to tape this show.
It was. And Captain Strassel is an active member, public health officer in the Air National Guard. in the.
And is that her full-time job?
No, that's she's in the Guards, kind of like the Army Reserves.
Okay.
So that's the your weekend warrior. You go
Okay.
you do your drill on the weekends and maybe your week a year.
So she's not coming from that particular. Where did she come from?
She moved here from her husband's from here, and she moved here to take to follow him in his career. Previously, they were in Binghamton, and she worked for Lourdes Hospital as a veteran navigator, helping veterans obtain medical care.
And what does the county's Veteran Service Director do?
So the county's Veteran Service Director helps our veterans process claims and interface with the VA system. They're an advocate for them. They help veterans and veterans' families with burials and accessing any number of benefits that they're entitled to. And we've always done those things. We've performed those services very well. What really stood out in our interview process and why the search committee really navigated towards Captain Strassel is that she brought a even broader view of veteran services and wanting to really be the gateway for all veteran services in the county, regardless of what type of services they're trying to access. So her background in public health, her understanding of PTSD, the opportunities to integrate and expand services with the Office for Aging, with DSS, with our mental health clinic. She really brought a broad view of what we can do as a county, and we're really excited to have her leadership.
And she came on board when?
She came on board in September. She went to basic training for Veteran Services Officer in Albany in September. She's now doing her advanced training out there, either this week or next week, and we're absolutely thrilled with her. She'll always be the first department head. I was fortunate enough to hire, and I'm really happy she's on board.
Good. The original reason we were going to have you on, and in these news cycles that seem to be just churning over each other on a daily basis, about 4 months ago there was a lot of talk about shared services.
Yes.
And while there's still a lot of talk on the 6th floor and with towns and villages, for the public, they most likely have Khashoggi and everything else on there. It's behind them. What is the shared services plan that the county's been working on?
Well, the shared services plan was something that was required by New York State for the chief executive of each county to work with the chief executive of all the local municipalities, the village mayors, the town supervisors, the city mayor, and collaborate on what things we could do to save money and to operate government more efficiently. So we prepared a plan in accordance with the timeline laid out by the state that looked at I think 10 different projects, some of which are feasible, some of which may turn out to not be practical, but the state required that anything that we wanted to submit to put in. And then what happens is if we're able to do any of those in the next calendar year and are successful in documenting savings, we'll get a one-time match reimbursement from the state that'll be shared by anybody who participated in that.
And what happens, let me go with the negative before we go to the positive. What happens if you did not submit one?
There were, I don't know if anybody didn't. I think what some people did was submit plans and not project any savings and just say, okay, we met and
checked it off the list and we sent it over.
Yeah, I think the fear was if you didn't, you may be looked at unfavorably in other grant cycles, and there was certainly in some parts of the state and some communities a negative reaction to being forced to do this, having to do it without the state providing any staff or resources to do it. And I can certainly understand some of those sentiments. We looked at it as an opportunity for improving communication throughout the region and figuring out ways that we could have positive dialogue with the communities throughout the county, ways that we could help learn more to understand what the local municipalities need, and ways that we could collaborate better to provide more efficient services to the residents in our community and hopefully reduce some costs as well.
So I want to go back to the credits for a second. What happens if you said there's 10 and we'll ask you for some examples of some. What happens if you get partially the way there? Do you get partial money or is it just all or nothing?
So what it is that any project that you implement that was included in the plan, you can then submit for reimbursement for a match for those savings. So not the whole thing, but the documented savings. And then there's rules that they're putting out and they've been kind of developing as they go. For example, if there's a capital project, then you're saving the the net difference of the amortized cost over the life cycle for a
So,
year.
yeah, so let's, we can talk about one that has been talked about right now has been the city, the college, and the county with Falcon Park, where they'll break ground
Exactly.
on Monday. There may be some, because the college's original cost was $14 million, I think,
Mm-hmm.
if they put it behind the studio, and this is now, I think, a more reasonable 1.4 or something like.
Yep.
So there's some savings in there, and you should be able to divvy up part of that pie, your hope is?
We're going to try to. That's a project that we have to try to massage to make it fit within the regulations, and it also is supposed to be within the calendar year.
Okay, so, well, is the calendar year from the year of your submission of the report, or
No,
the? Oh,
it's the following year after the submission of your report. So technically the project's supposed to be started and completed within a calendar year of January 1 to December 31, which
so you penalize if you can get a contractor to start early.
but which we obviously needed to do in order for the timeline for the
To meet
project
the
to
double,
work.
okay.
So one way we're looking at doing that is whether the lease maybe starts January 1st.
Okay.
And so we're trying to massage that in.
But go separate from that. You said there were 10. Give me two that you really like, you're hot on, and you think can be done and achievable.
Number one, joint purchasing, especially in areas of highway departments. So we met with the highway superintendents group this morning. Right now, all of the highway superintendents, as well as the county, all purchase salt, for example, off of the state bid. We believe, and there's significant experience in other places to show, that if we put out our own bid collectively for all of the use in the county, that we could drive that cost down and save everybody money.
Now, I was at some meeting and I heard something, and I guess I'd never paid attention to this. Sometimes the state bid can be higher.
Yes. Yes, it can be.
I'm not saying just for salt, but in other instances as well. Okay, so that's one.
So and people go with the state bid because there's a convenience factor.
Right. You
And-
check some boxes and it's delivered
Right.
and everybody's happy.
Right. So that does tie into the shared service, to the budget request of a purchasing director, increasing our capacity to do that in a way that benefits everybody.
Okay.
The second area that we had a lot of conversation about, and I think is ripe for a lot of opportunity, is in real property services and assessment services. And so Kelly Anderson facilitated one discussion during one of our workshops, and she laid out a range of options that municipalities could consider. And that would be range from contracting with the county to provide exemption administration or data collection, to contracting with us to provide the full assessment service for them.
So let me ask you this: as somebody who's a county administrator, is there a reason that every town needs two assessors, especially when you can't sometimes even get anybody to run for them?
That's a loaded question, and
That is why I'm
here. It's ultimately a local political question that isn't really for me to answer. So,
But do you think so let me rephrase it. Do you think a county could provide those types of services more efficiently for a full county, so that you don't have these different equalization rates, property line over property line?
So there's only one county in the state that's actually doing countywide assessing, and that's Tompkins County, and they've been doing it since the 70s, I believe.
Does it work for them?
It does work for them.
So why is nobody following the land of roses?
Parochialism is
Okay.
part of it. The other part of it is local control. So we have not been, from the county administration standpoint, advocating for countywide anything, whether it be highway or assessment services. What we're trying to do is understand the lay of the land and the opportunities, and present to the local officials, these are the range of services that we can provide for you, that you can contract with us, that can improve your service, improve reliability, perhaps do it at less cost, or cumulatively, if enough of you come on, we can do it at less cost. And in the assessment world is a great example, where if a few more towns come with us, we'll be able to start to develop specialization. So we can have somebody that does the data collection, somebody that does the exemption administration, somebody does the commercial appraisals.
And I did want to just ask about process. So you've mentioned Kelly Anderson in a meeting. You had a meeting with highway superintendents. So there was this is partially a process-driven process, in the sense that you convene several meetings with the chief elected officer of each of the towns, the villages, in the city. They met to do what?
They met to brainstorm and discuss.
With or without staff?
That varied,
Okay.
certainly, yeah, and keep in mind, I want to reinforce that Chairman Mahunik was the chair of this panel, and I was the lead of the staff team at the county. And the city manager was a critical component of it as well. We met with the chief elected officials. For certain subjects, we encouraged and invited other people to participate. When we talked about the courts, we invited the magistrates and the local justices. When we talked about highway, we invited all of the highway superintendents.
So was this a structure that was set up by you, is local, or did the state mandate a format for it?
The state set deadlines by which we had to have certain numbers
But not
of
who was going to be
meetings.
invited to what meeting or
Exactly, that was we developed locally.
How many meetings did you have?
We had a kickoff meeting, we had 3 workshop sessions, we had a couple of sessions to review the draft plan, and then we had public hearings throughout the county, as well as a public hearing on the final plan when we were done.
And did every village, town in the city participate?
In some capacity.
Well, I saw something where they all had to sign that they were either in or they're out. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
And did everybody sign that they were in for the overall plan?
Yeah, so the way we did it and the way we structured it was that you were able to opt in or out of any project. And at the end of that, then there was a vote yes or no on the plan.
And did a majority of...
An overwhelming majority voted
Okay.
yes on the plan.
I want to ask you something else before we run out of time. I love this, and this is, you now do a monthly report, and I think this is your 9th out of 10 months?
Correct.
Couldn't get the first one done the first week?
No, actually we did, I started December 18th.
I'm picking on you.
We started in January.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, that was a heavy lift that first month for the staff when I showed up and I said, okay, I want to do this, and everybody get it in, and I'm going to NISAC.
Okay, which is the New York State Association of Counties.
Yes, and we did it. We pulled it off the first month. We've maintained it every month since.
So in here, and I'm not going to pop up every page, but the first one I've talked about, we talk about Public Works, and we talk about the Sheriff's Department. There's a report from the department head talking about what's going on in their department. Public Works, you've got Doug Delastrito, Sheriff Gould for the Sheriff's Department. They're talking about what's going on in their departments, correct?
Exactly.
Is this mandated for every department to participate?
Yes.
So I looked at the last one and there were gaps. So what happens if somebody doesn't submit a report?
There hasn't been too many gaps.
Okay.
There's been a couple where a report didn't come in, and
Okay.
you know, that portion is vacant. Certainly, if it was an elected department head, that would just be taken out.
That would be the-
there wouldn't be a vacant gap. It would just be taken out.
Okay. What are you trying to accomplish?
Government transparency, accountability. We're trying to provide information to both the elected officials and the public about what it is the county government does. So I think a lot of people don't have a full comprehensive perspective of all the things that we do, and also the realization that almost all of what we do is a function or a mandate of the state. There's very little that is discretionary in county government. And
this will be updated monthly, and how does someone access it?
It's on the county website, on the county administrator's report, on the county administrator's page. There'll probably be a tab on the new site.
Okay.
But to your question about the budget, we're continuing to update the current site. We're continuing to put information on that site more timely than, and try to get as much information as we can. Right now there's a memo from me to the legislature, as well as a copy of my presentation on the public hearing for the Department of Public Works law. So we're keeping information right on the home site. The monthly report's on my page.
And so if somebody wants to look up, you've talked about tax reports and sales tax, you can go on into this and look at this.
You can.
I want to go back to shared services because it is so important here. Not everybody, did every town and village get one vote each?
Yes.
So
The chief executive, the chief elected
oh,
got
okay.
a vote.
So did anybody, you had a couple who abstained, I think I read it. They didn't vote overwhelmingly. They weren't able to participate in some of the meetings, and they didn't feel comfortable, it looked like from the notes I saw, participating. If somebody voted no, why did they vote no in your mind?
I can't speak for them. I can
Okay.
speak to a really collaborative process that brought a lot of people together. It was at an inconvenient time. We met on Friday afternoon throughout the summer.
You were in the Saturday morning paper.
And it was remarkable. It was remarkable the commitment we had from the local political leadership and our staff to be there on Friday afternoons and into the evenings on beautiful nights. But we came together, we did the work that we had to do, and I look forward to continuing to work with our local partners to implement the plan.
Is there any negative impact for a town that vote, or a city, or I know the city didn't vote no, I believe they voted yes. If somebody voted no, is there any negative impact?
Not from my perspective.
No, from the states.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think so. And from the county perspective, it doesn't matter if they did vote no. We're still here to work with them like we are to work with everybody.
Real quickly, we got about a minute and a half to go. I did want to talk about one infrastructure. You have been working aggressively, you and the county, on the village of Aurora. Has had some challenging water issues. What is the issue, first of all?
Well, the issue is related to harmful algal blooms, and much like what had to be done in the city and Owasco treatment plants, the Village of Aurora plant, which is owned by Wells College, didn't have the infrastructure to ensure that the mycotoxins,
the stuff in the water,
the bad stuff in the water,
okay,
didn't get into the drinking water supply.
So, did the county come up with some bridge financing?
We did. So the state,
because the city and Owasco had state financing.
They did have, and ultimately some grant funding was created for the college, who owns the system. But our concern was that money wasn't going to be there in time to make sure that this carbon activation filters got there installed in time to prevent.
And how much have you come up with?
So we provided, the Cayuga County Development Corporation provided a bridge loan of, I think, $550,000 or $600,000 to bridge finance that, pledged against the grant money coming back to the village and the college.
So do you think this sets a precedent for others who come forward and say, listen, we've got a similar problem, we need bridge financing? Because that can get expensive, I guess, is my point.
I don't know. I mean, we had the financing, we had the money in the bank, we had it available. It certainly had legitimate economic development purposes to, the college is a big economic generator, as is the Inns of Aurora, and we had the resources available to, at very low risk, ensure that we didn't have an economic or public health catastrophe. So I think that was a good use of the funds we had at the time, and I believe we've already started to receive some payments back.
All right. Well, our guest in 30 minutes goes very quickly. We didn't get to a couple of things, including broadband, but our guest has been County Administrator J. Justin Woods, and we're delighted to have you here on the show. Hopefully we'll come back in a couple of weeks once you get further into the budget process.
Tuesday or Thursday?
Tuesday or Thursday. Well, let me talk about programming. First of all, thank you for being here. So on a programming note, we will be back in just, we'll be back, in fact, on Tuesday, October 30 with, October 23rd with Dana Balter, who will be in the studio for a one-on-one hour interview for the 24th Congressional District seat. She is challenging incumbent John Katko, who was available to participate that day in a forum, but his campaign has so far declined our invitation. It is the only campaign that has declined our invitation at this stage of the state and federal offices. At this point, unless both candidates appear, I will be doing the question, unlike normal forums where Jeremy Boyer does that. If you have a question or idea you would like me to ask her about, you can send it to Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021, or cozguytho@aol.com. On Thursday the 25th, we will have the candidates for the 50th Senate District who want to succeed Senator John DeFrancisco. Both Republican Robert Antonacci and his opponent, Democrat John W. Mannion, will be here in the studio with Citizen Executive Director Jeremy Boyer asking the questions and my moderating. We'll close our forums on Tuesday, October 30th, with the race for the 126th Assembly District that faces incumbent Gary D. Finch, a Republican, against his challenger, Cayuga County Legislator Keith Batman, who is a Democrat. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good evening, have a great weekend, and we will see you back here in the studio on Tuesday.